I love talking with passionate business owners. Their enthusiasm is irresistible. Their knowledge, it's invaluable. And their wisdom, it holds the keys to transforming your passion into a successful business. As a marketing strategist, I help people around the world innovate and grow their business. I'm Jay Hamilton Roth, and this is Business with Passion. Today's episode features guests who make a living infusing more fun and games into people's lives. Dan Zelinsky is the owner of San Francisco's Musée Mécanique, one of the world's largest collection of coin-operated antique arcade machines. Instead of simply letting people look at the antiques, he lets people play with them.
The way I got into this business is I grew up with this equipment in my house as a child. My dad started collecting, before I was born. So I grew up with this as pretty much second nature as far as I'm concerned. When my dad opened his first location in Tiburon back in the mid-60s, I started working there part-time and through school vacations and holidays, weekends, and time just kept marching on, and I'm still here. I had no intention of doing this full-time. I didn't even know it was an option. But my dad said, well, why don't you go work at the Cliff House? I said, why? What's there? He said, well, I've got an arcade for the last 3 years. Why don't you try working there? So I went out there, and there's all these fantastic machines that used to be in our house, and I started working there part-time. And that was in 1972. And it was supposed to be a part-time job, but I loved this. And I just never turned back. We were at the Cliff House from 72 up to 8 years ago, whatever that was. And when they renovated the Cliff House, everyone had to move out of there just so, because they tore it down to the ground. And so they didn't have room for us to move back in. So they said, you better find some new digs. And my dad and I looked at 13 places in San Francisco, none of which were going to work for a multitude of reasons, until my dad found here, Pier 45, and he built that wall. This was just a parking lot. This entire pier was one huge parking lot. My dad built that wall, put in all the fixtures, the electrical, and voila, we moved in. The money generated to sustain this collection is generated from my visitors putting coins in the machine. That's the only income this place has to sustain it. And in summertime, like all the other businesses, I would assume at Fisherman's Wharf, they do really well, during the tourist time. And during the off season, you start spending what you earned in the summertime. But it's working out. It's got a good balance between the two, and it's enough to sustain us over the years. We've been here 8 years already. We're open every day of the year. Admission is free every day of the year. The machines are all coin operated, but you can play what you want and ignore the rest. It's fun for all ages, regardless if you're 2 years old in the arms of your parents having your pictures taken in the photo booth, or enjoy playing a good game of pinball. It's all here. The technology of this collection ranges from the most primitive mechanical mechanisms up to the most modern state-of-the-art that electronics has to offer. And that ranges from, my oldest machine here is 1884. It's a praxinoscope, which is one of the first motion picture machines built in France, up to like what we have next to me here is the Pirates of the Caribbean, one of the newest pinball machines, which is, it's so modernized that you can actually call it on the telephone and it'll tell you what parts are broken, and on and on and on. I mean, it's just amazing what they'll do now. So I mean, there's everything in between, the oldest and the newest with, but I think the beauty of this collection are the mechanics and what keeps them going. I have no background in this whatsoever, except for on-the-job experience that I've accumulated over the years. As we had to hire people to do repairs, I would just watch what they did and learn from them. And I'd say most of them were more than willing to share how to do the repairs. And I've just cultivated job skills that I never knew existed since I've been here. And it's been fascinating, down to just cleaning, which is an art form in itself to keep up with the flow of traffic here, to machining my own parts for the machines because the parts are no longer available. So I went to City College and I took a machine shop class there, and they taught me what I needed to know to help maintain this collection. The manufacturers of these machines are long gone. There's a few that are still in business, like Seeberg, who used to make some of the player pianos. They're still in business today doing, they make the iPod jukeboxes for, commercial restaurants and so on and so forth. And the Philadelphia Toboggan Company that manufactured Laughing Sal, they're still in business, but they make state-of-the-art roller coasters now. They don't make Laughing Sals anymore. I guess the biggest challenge is keeping everything working on a daily basis. Because if there's just one machine that doesn't work, it drives me insane. Because that's the one machine everyone will come here to see. And I go, what do you mean it doesn't work? We just came from Idaho to see End of the Trail. What do you mean it doesn't work? It drives me nuts. So I am really a fanatic about trying to keep everything working. Probably the hardest game to keep working are the KO boxers, the 1927 KO boxers. They get and it's not because they get abused, it's just that they get used, and people are very aggressive with this machine. And it is a hands-on, like all of them, they're a hands-on physical, use this machine like it was intended to be used. So that's a high maintenance machine. The photo booths need a lot of maintenance. They don't go more than a couple of days without needing something. One of the main draws is the nostalgic aspect that people remember growing up as kids. These are the machines they used to play while they were kids, and they want to show their kids what it used to be like back in the day. Oh, one of the most popular machines are probably the black and white photo booth machines. I've got a couple of them that are from the early 50s that still use the old school chemical tanks, and that's a great machine. There's also one of the staples of the industry are ski balls. We have a couple ski balls. Laughing Sal, which has been San Francisco's landmark since the early 40s. The pricing of the machines is kind of odd. I keep some of the machines inexpensive. I still have a penny machine because it's very novel. The sex tester, I think it is. I've got several nickel and dime machines because it's just kind of fun to play things that are a nickel. I mean, nobody at the wharf, especially here at the wharf, you play something for a nickel. But I've changed some machines from a quarter to $1 because I thought it would help eliminate the wear and tear that they get. But people will see a machine for $1 and they think, wow, this must be great. We're going to try this. It isn't great just because it's $1. Please understand, we're just eliminating some wear and tear, but that backfired completely. So, and like some of my coin-operated telescopes, they used to be 10 cents, and they would get X amount of play, but we raised them to a quarter, and they got the amount of play increased many times, because people thought, well, they must work really well if they're going to be a quarter. So, I can't predict how people are going to respond to what I do. I just go with it. There's no predicting my visitors. I'm always looking for new machines to add to the collection. I don't mean new, but just antiques of some sort. Anything that's fun to play with and interact with is what I enjoy watching other people interact with. I think that's the most fun part of my job, are watching people be entertained and just interact with the machines. It's hilarious. Most people don't even know what a coin chute is anymore, or that you're supposed to drop a coin in a coin slot. That just doesn't compute at all. They just need a keyboard. And so, I mean, the stories I could tell you about what they've done, they think they're playing a machine, but they're really not. Well, we have 9,300 square feet here, and it seems like no matter where I am, I'm in the wrong place with somebody needing help at the other end of the arcade. So the roller skates are very helpful. And I probably skate, 7, 8, 10 hours a day. And I can't stand working here without them. It's too much fun. And I'm taller, I like that. But I started out on a skateboard back at the Cliff House. Somebody stole the skateboard, so I figured that I can't get my roller skates out from under me, so I've been roller skating ever since. One of the highlights of working here is enjoying visitors that come from all over the world. They get to sign my guest registration book, and they're from countries I've never even heard of. So it makes it interesting because they don't really know what they're walking into. They don't know what a arcade is. They don't know what a coin slot is. And so watching them trying to interact with something this foreign is very entertaining for me. And I enjoy helping them because they haven't a clue what they're supposed to do. And once I'll just drop a coin in, a player piano, and just one piano will fill up this entire room with great music. And so it's like the Pied Piper, people just come pouring into that one machine. I don't do any advertising at all. I've had a lot of documentaries done here. I've had a lot of college thesis, students that will be into film or history, and they'll pick this place to do their thesis on. A lot of school field trips. This is great for school field trips because, with 30 kids, it's all free admission. You'll get all 30 kids to see one piano for a quarter, or they'll see the carnival for 50 cents, and they'll all see the whole thing. So that works out well. I have to be with the collection full-time, or else I can't oversee the glitches. And there's so many glitches hour to hour that if somebody's not there to take care of it, people are kind of discouraged. I mean, why would we come back if things don't work? And so I like having everything under one roof, and I like being under that one roof so I can maintain the collection. I think that's very important. I have a staff. I've got one full-time employee that helps me with repairs, and I have 2 part-time employees that help. Just depends on what needs being done. I have 2 sons, 19 and 22, and they both help me here. Thank goodness. I could turn this into a museum. The reason I am not is because I want people to enjoy these machines like they were originally intended to be used. It's a hands-on interact with the machines. I've seen a lot of museums with a similar collection, but they're not open for the public to play and interact with. There's a docent that'll walk through on Thursdays and let you play this machine, or they'll play that machine for you. I don't want a museum. I don't want, I've got a little bit of information on certain machines so you can read about them, but more importantly is that they work so you can enjoy them for what they do, not what they are. It's very important for me to have a good time here, and that's basically all we're doing. I think I'm pretty lucky as far as being able to just keep this as it is. As long as my visitors are having a really good time and the machines are working, I think that's a great day at the Musée. It's too simple. Just keep the machines working and having my visitors enjoy it for what it's supposed to be, a penny arcade.
For me, the keys to Dan Zelinsky's success are, first, he's continued his dad's arcade, mostly because he liked the business's simplicity. Next, he's managed his biggest expense, maintenance, by learning necessary skills on the job. And lastly, success for Dan is measured in the pleasure he brings his visitors, and knowing that word of mouth will keep his arcade popular for years to come. Michael McGinnis's childhood fascination with mazes evolved into inventing a new type of toy, a 3D maze game. Since then, he's won awards and passionate fans worldwide.
I was a junior in high school. I took an art class and the teacher gave us a problem, which was to design a board game. And I really was bad at playing board games. My sisters and brothers would beat me all the time. And so I thought, well, I love mazes, but I've got to think of some kind of thing which would be a game related to that. And I drew this box. And it was a very poorly drawn box, very poorly drawn idea. And it was, though, the precursor to this idea of making a three-dimensional maze. I used to play with this game called Labyrinth, and it's a little maze ball thing. You turn these 2 knobs and it tilts the plate around and the ball rolls around. And I thought, well, what would it be like to be able to make one of those three-dimensional rather than on a 2D plane? So in this cube that I'd drawn, I thought, well, I'll build pathways or aqueducts and little bridges that would be glued to the inside of the cube. And so I showed it to the instructor, and he says, okay, now you got to build it. Some people say, well, how do you think of these things? Well, I spend hours and hours and hours working on these things, and it isn't a straightforward process for myself even. So as I would work out ideas, it dawned on me that what I'm really working with is not a single object or a sculpture, just a single sculpture inside of this cube. Instead, it's a concept. And the concept is that we have pathways that intersect and allow you to travel from one side of a pathway to another. And that's what makes it three-dimensional. And so I have a little model of that idea. It's not really a Mobius strip according to a mathematician, but I think of it that way. And as you can see, if you start from black here, I can move around onto green, transferring onto blue, and then through red and back to black. And so ultimately every surface of a structure can be used as a pathway. And that's the basic underlying concept for this game. So I developed a whole language, pathway inverters, rails, tubes, zigzags, steps, and a whole cadre of devices for getting you from one place to another. And then so it boiled down to, it's a modular structure. Let's say that I could make zigzags. I could make 2 zigzags and put them together with 3 inverters or something, and then I would have another concept. And it would be really nice at that point to be able to build some designs which allowed interchangeability. You could build one module, connect it into another, and you can make a more complex version, or your own version. You can change it and make it more difficult if you wanted to. When I did my sketches, I found, this is something that I teach in my own classes now, I realized that sketches don't create it. It does not get built from a sketch. And a sketch is false. Because if something's complex enough, it really takes building the physical thing in order to reveal what it is that is being presented. And so none of my sketches ever turn out to be like the real thing. I was in an art class, one of my digital art classes, and I had a student in there. My students know a lot. And that's one of the things, I learn a lot from my students, they learn a lot from me. It's an exchange. And I had a student, Erin Montague. She was taking a digital art class. Her brother turns out to be teaching the same kind of class in San Francisco. And I just asked her, and she's the only person in all of my years teaching that I asked any questions about this. I said, do you know anyone in the toy industry? And she says, well, my brother, and he happened to do package design and other kinds of graphic work for a company called KID, or Klissner Industrial Design, in San Francisco. And their sole purpose is to, well, they have several purposes. One of them, they design bottles, but their passion is to create toys. And they have license agreements with all the major manufacturers, and all of the major distributors know who they are. They have created things for Discovery Toys. They've made things for Hasbro, for Star Wars things. And they never really take partners in anything. But he was willing to come and have me talk to him, given that it was Erin, his sister, who was saying it. He says, I've seen every possible thing under the sun. When you're in this industry, you're jaded, but I'll talk to you anyway. So I met with him in San Francisco. I showed him my little crummy little model, because this is all I had. And he looked at it, and I thought he would be the kind of person who could say, okay, we can design a really great model for this. He just said, I've never seen anything like this. This is a no-brainer. And so he was willing to introduce me to Dan Klissner. And Dan looked at these things, and he immediately saw a potential for it. And he said, this is so different than anything that we work with that I would be willing to either give you contacts or become partners in some way. And they could help work on some design elements of it, packaging concepts, taking it to companies. And we worked together for 5 years. And in that process, Dan would say, I'd come in like early in the morning, right before class. I would go to San Francisco, meet with them, show them something I worked on all night. And then he would say, okay, now can you make one a little bigger? And I'd run home, and I'd work all night again, and come in the morning, and give him another model, and then maybe it'd be a question, well, can we now make one of those spirals that we're talking about? And I would make another one. So over and over again, we were developing these concepts. And then a company took it on, and I have a version of it which is called, it was the first one called Perplexus. It was a little tiny one. They gave me 3 days to design the toy concept, and then I think 4 days to build a physical model. And I built a model in a very short period of time. It really was not enough time to come up with a really good design. And they wanted it in a sphere, and it has a timer, electronics. And they made a TV commercial. They did all of this marketing. They put it into the New York Toy Fair, and they went belly up. And at that point, Dan and I were thinking, well, you know, we've lost this now, so what could I do differently? And we were talking about, what if one was made a little larger and it could be called the superplexus as opposed to the perplexus? And so this was during the recount for Al Gore. And I was working on this even during Thanksgiving. I brought all my tools to my sister's house and set up a little shop at their place because I had to get this done. This represents 100 hours of construction. It's an extremely complex maze that I've never finished. No one's ever come to the end of it. But when I showed it to Dan and his people, he just said, you know, this is the way to go. We need a large version of like this. This is made out of styrene plastic. It was the way that I constructed is to take a little jeweler's saw and to cut out the pieces and glue them together with crazy glue or with a styrene glue and hold each piece. And it's springy on the inside. There are moving elements. It's got all these different little circus kind of features to it. And yet it's totally not manufacturable. It's way too complex. Here is the finished version of Superplexus. It has numbers 1 through 100. My intention was to have the numbers marked with color, printed on, silk screened on, so that you could see all of the numbers, but they were embossed instead in order to save money, because you know you do the tooling one time and then all the numbers are there. But to set up every piece with a silk screen adds to the cost. My intention also was to have it look white, or at least in very bright colors, because it's difficult to see some of the pathways. There's a shine, which is any kind of lighting that you have in the room reflects on it. It becomes a bright kind of ball is difficult to see inside of. When I built them in cubes, that was never an issue, because the cubes have a flat surface and once in a while they shine. So the colors, though, the colors that it became, this purple and the yellow and this bluish color, is based on the Bop It colors. KID, Dan Klitzner and his team invented Bop It. And so Hasbro wanted to tie Bop It in with Superplexus, or Superplexus in with Bop It, and so they could put on the package from the makers of Bop It. Well, there are a few other features of this that were kind of odd or interesting problems to try to solve. One is that you notice that it's a perfect circle from the front, but from the side it's an egg shape. Not really an egg, but it's not exactly an ellipse either. But it's a sad story, a sad tale. I'll show you something here. It's the package that was designed by Hasbro or by Tiger Electronics, and it was meant to be 2 on a shelf, on a 14-inch shelf. What happened was they showed it to Toys R Us, and Toys R Us said they get they're so large, they get a preview of what these things will be, and they said we won't carry it unless we can fit 2 on a shelf. And so I immediately designed a package which would work, 2 on a shelf. If it was made in a triangular form, instead of being square as it is, if it was triangular, you could nest them, and they come out to exactly 14 inches. But that wasn't the way it was going to be. It was going to be killed, or we have to do something. So one of the people in an email exchange says, cut it flat. Just cut the sphere off flat, and then it can sit on a table, and it won't be a problem. And I argued and argued about that, did some drawings. These are the overnight kinds of things, you know, with Hong Kong. And came up with a curve which would not allow it to be distorted, but would also, you know, to still make it clear, but it would also then be narrow enough to fit 2 on a shelf. I've never been happy with that design. When it's in a perfect sphere, it just feels better in your hands. My first attempt at building a large-scale Superplexus, called Giant Superplexus, is this piece. I have a preliminary name for it called Superplexus Circles, because it has just so many circular elements in it. It was built primarily for the Maker Faire which was going on in San Mateo, and I was asked by the editors of Make magazine to be involved with telling the story of my superplexus. But I thought, well, why not give me the opportunity now to create a large-scale version? The interior structure is 4 feet in diameter. By the time it builds the outer rings, it's somewhere around 5.5 feet. But the reason that it's a 4-foot diameter is because that's the size, the biggest foam core I could buy. I wanted to have a structural plane going through it, so if you see this black ring going around, there is one complete sheet in there that has as many perforations, as many holes as I could possibly put into it, yet maintain some structural integrity and then and pathways. And so I would then, in order to create the next step, I would have to take a large piece of foam core, cut out into the same circular diameter, the 4-foot diameter, and interconnect those elements and figure out how they would join and where it might go and where to cut out and remove material, because it's not pre-planned. The only pre-planning I had was that I knew I wanted intersecting elements, and then to begin constructing individual little obstacles or challenges that could be plugged into various areas. One thing I know is that people love to play with superplexes. Everywhere I go, I show these things and I'm mobbed by people wanting to play. There's never been an issue in my mind that it would be successful. I would love to see one of these things in a museum of modern art. I would love to see one of these in the Getty.
I see the keys to Michael McGinnis's success as, first, he had both the skills and tireless passion to transform his idea into a manufacturable game. Next, he gets immense joy from seeing the smiles of people playing with his toy sculptures. And lastly, by continuing to evolve his products, he's investing in his long-term success. Today's guests earn money by giving people more fun in their lives, a healthy and joyful business model. I hope that this episode has given you many good ideas for increasing your business with passion.